Have you always known that you're on a soul path? And have you wondered how to gain real insight into the steps along your own unique journey? Welcome everyone, I'm Sarah Main, and thank you for joining me on Damayanti, the show for your soul. I'm so glad to have you along. Damayanti means peace and calm. Damayanti sheds a light for your soul through the wisdom that shines in the universal language of Sanskrit. Damayanti is the show that speaks to your soul, connects with your soul, and enriches your soul. Join me now on Damayanti, the show for your soul, and be inspired and uplifted by the beautiful light of this profound, timeless wisdom. Welcome everyone, welcome. Welcome to Damayanti, the show for your soul with me, Sarah Main. And today on Damayanti, we're going to be talking about embrace the sovereignty of your soul. Embrace the sovereignty of your soul. And it's so important to consider this. Your soul is great. Your soul is that spark of divinity in each of us. Have you ever considered what is the nature of the soul? We talk about souls and connect with your soul and all that sort of thing. But what is the true nature of the soul? The soul is that spark of divinity in each of us. That soul is infinite, infinite, it's infinite. The soul is great. The soul is whole, complete, and pure. The soul appears to us to be individual. We have an individual experience, and that's perfect. But in truth, the soul is universal, one and undivided. So we have this individual experience, and yet the soul is one, it's pure, it's universal, it's great, it's mighty, it's magnificent, it's infinite, it's limitless. So your soul, the essence of who you truly are, who we are truly, all of us, is infinite, great, whole, pure, and universal. And that means incredibly powerful, all powerful actually. So we need to be reminded of that. We need to be reminded of this truth. We all do. Our day-to-day experience may not always feel like that. It just doesn't. We may not think of ourselves like this. We often don't. And we may think that to think like this is a big ego trip. I'm not really like that. Oh, I shouldn't. And we have all these sort of ideas and things that come in that will close us down and keep us small. However, if we accept and embrace our greatness, one of the first things we may encounter is a sense of responsibility. And that what we think, what we say, and what we do has an impact on those close to us and to our community and society and our nation and the world at large. So stepping into and embracing the greatness, the universality, the limitlessness of our soul, of ourselves, our true nature, actually brings responsibility with it. And it's easier to stay small. And in fact, often the fear we experience within, and I think it might have been Nelson Mandela said that we don't fear others as much as we actually fear our own greatness.
within. So words to the effect of the fear, the greater fear that we experience is the fear of our own greatness, facing our own greatness. You get the idea. So it's very important to actually stop and consider this, because otherwise we can just roll on in our life and we stay within these concepts of limit, and we act and speak and react within those things, within those limits, and we don't realize we're doing it because we're really in a form of waking sleep. So to be reminded wakens us to, or allows us to awaken to the greatness of ourselves. So we're all connected. We're all part of this universal divine soul. It stands to reason that whatever we think, say, and do has an effect on the whole, as within, so without. And we are a sovereign soul. And that means stepping into your greatness doesn't mean you have to ask permission to someone to do that. You are sovereign. There's a certain imposter syndrome is common, and it can come saying, I can't possibly do that. I'm not worthy to do that. I'm not qualified to do that. All those things, and they're labeled often by psychologists as the imposter syndrome, and it's well known and well recognized. If you haven't heard of the imposter syndrome, it might you might recognize that in certain situations in your life. But to disregard that is not a big step of ego. It's actually a step of humility to acknowledge and embrace that greatness within you, because it brings a responsibility with it. That we are an infinite being. We are a sovereign soul. We are responsible for our own choices. And we can make our own choices. That's what it means to be sovereign. So if we embrace and connect with the greatness of our soul, then we stand up tall and strong. You'll often feel, and I've tutored groups of adults, or even when I was teaching classes of children, when you talk about the greatness that we have within, it's natural. People sort of find themselves just naturally sitting up taller. Their head comes up. They start looking out. It gives them a different perspective. We all need to be reminded, all of us. And we find that once we actually embrace and accept that our soul is great and infinite, and it may be just in that moment, in whatever way we can, to the degree that we can at the time. It's never just a one-off thing and that's it. We find that one of the ways that we can proceed is we work with greater self-respect and with greater dignity. And they're the two qualities I'm going to talk about now, is self-respect and dignity. And with that comes a natural desire to uplift and to serve all those we meet. So we actually then can appreciate that our life is an opportunity for service and to uplift and leave people feeling better than they felt before, and the situation better than it was when you arrived. And that's through service. And we can serve our family and our loved ones, our community, our society, and our nation, and in fact, humanity at large. But we need to start with what's actually in our situation, our family and our loved ones. And to work in service of others is to uplift. And that's anything but an ego trip. But you have to step over that idea that immediately pops up, that embracing your greatness is an ego trip, because then we can serve. And it's an expression of our soul path to do this. This is how we express the greatness of our soul, this divine spark within us. Because your soul seeks the best for all, including yourself. When we connect with it, there's a natural desire. It just goes with the territory to always see the best and seek the best and offer the best. Your soul never acts to harm or diminish someone. It's unnatural to do that. And our soul only wants the best. So that's how our soul is great. That's how our soul is magnificent. And that's how our soul is sovereign. So see the journey we've been on already so far of being reminded of the greatness of ourselves, of our soul, realizing that even though we have an individual experience, and that's natural when we're located in a physical body like this, our experience will initially be one of an individual experience, and then it can expand beyond the limits of the physical to something greater because we are part of a whole, this whole greatness, this whole presence, this whole universal being. We can ascend, our consciousness lifts and ascends. And this consciousness, this soul, our soul, is sovereign. And to step over any sense that we're not worthy, that this is a big ego trip. So we have two things. We have, we're not worthy, we're not good enough on the one hand, which is completely illusory. And I talked about that in my previous show about Satya and the ever shining light of truth. You might want to go back and listen to that because I talk about these illusory things we have. And I use the story of the snake and the rope. Where we can be in the half light walking along a path and think we see a snake, but it's actually a piece of rope coiled up on the ground that's just dropped out of someone's bag. But in that illusion, we can have the whole experience of the fear and everything that plays through the body, and our actions will be determined by that perception, that illusory perception of reality. So in this situation, we can have this so-called snake, and I'm using air quotes here, that we are not worthy, and that embracing our greatness and standing up tall is an ego trip. And if you connect with the truth of yourself, it's anything but that. There's a great responsibility that comes with that. There's a great humility, and there's a great desire to serve, and serve in the way of offering the best to everyone we meet, the finest, to uplift, to say a kind word, to praise, not to judge, to bring people together rather than to divide, find the unifying factor in a situation. All those things are natural to our sovereign soul, and we seek to do that when we connect with ourselves. So it's important to come back and be reminded, because that's how we can proceed every day with the simple tasks, the domestic tasks within our life, our relationships and our interactions. And then, of course, like a pebble dropped in water, the ripples ripple out of that upliftment, that higher consciousness and that ascension. And we make better choices because we are a sovereign soul. So we'll take a break now. And after we come back, I'm going to drill down a bit more and look into dignity, because that's the hallmark of a great and sovereign soul, is acting with dignity and self-respect. And we'll look at what Sanskrit says about that. So we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Damayanti, the show for your soul. And today's show is on embrace the sovereignty of your soul. And we spend a little time just immersing ourselves in the memory of who we really are. We are a sovereign soul. We are infinite beings. We are an infinite being. The wisdom traditions talk about this. They're reminding constantly. Wherever you look, you're being reminded in the wisdom traditions of your greatness. You're an infinite sovereign soul. The soul we'd say within is that divine spark within you. When we just fall still and come to center for a minute, take a deep breath and become centered and grounded, we connect with something that is beyond just our physical body. And that's the starting point of actually connecting with your divine being, your sovereign soul. And sovereign because when we connect with our greatness and we embrace that greatness and that sovereignty, we realize we make our own choices. We can intellectually appreciate that, but to really get that every moment is a choice. What we do is a choice. What we say is a choice. What we feel is a choice. What we think is a choice. And we have ultimate responsibility. There's great humility with that. So it's anything but an ego trip. And that's so important to remember, because that ego trip idea is a real touch of that imposter syndrome, that I'm not good enough. I couldn't possibly, I don't want to be too big for my boots, all those things. And that just keeps us small and limited. And that is actually the work of the ego, not embracing your greatness. And embracing your greatness doesn't mean walking around with this puffed up ego saying, look at me, I'm amazing. that's just like a mouse walking around saying, look at me, look at me. It's not like that. The real greatness brings with it that sense of responsibility and a natural desire to serve and uplift others, parent others, starting with our family, our friends, our loved ones, our community, our society, our nation, humanity, always uplifting, praising, seeing the best. So if we've connected to our own soul, our own divine spark, our own sovereignty, and our consciousness, our awareness is raised, we'll naturally want to uplift others. It's a natural act of service. And one way that comes through is a natural sense of dignity. And the hallmark of a great and sovereign soul is dignity. And dignity is like an outward expression. And it's interesting because dignity and self-respect can seem an elusive quality. If you try and actually describe it, it's difficult. It's elusive, and yet we know it immediately when we see it. I like this quote actually. This is from a guy called Abraham Joshua Heschel, and he said, "Self-respect is the root of discipline. The sense of dignity grows with the ability to say no to oneself." I like that. Self-respect is the root of discipline. The sense of dignity grows with the ability to say no to oneself. Excuse me. And the saying no to oneself is saying no to those limits, saying no to those things that would stop us actually serving the greatness in others, saying no to those limiting habits that we have, be it a mental habit to think certain thoughts, a negative self-talk, the feelings that we like to wallow in that sap our energy, the activities and the actions and the behaviors that don't serve us well. So the sense of dignity grows with the ability to say no to all of that. And self-respect is the root of that discipline. So in Sanskrit, and I like to go back to the Sanskrit because Sanskrit embodies universal wisdom, and it broadens our perspective and deepens our understanding, gives us a different way of approaching this. The Sanskrit word for dignity is mahatmyam. And this is a compound word. That means it has parts to it. So it's one word, but it's got parts to it. Like in English, we have football is a compound word made up of foot and ball, but we have a single word, football. So this compound word mahatmyam is made up of maha, which means great, and atman, which means the essential indwelling self or soul. So we have great, soul. So dignity means great soul. So Mahatmyam means great souled, having a great or noble nature, being high-minded. That means thinking elevated thoughts. Noble, being highly gifted, and being exceedingly wise. And when I say noble, it doesn't mean a king or a queen, it doesn't mean you're born that way. You can be performing the simplest task and it can have nobility about it. Have you considered that? You could be sweeping the floor, but have a quality of nobility about how you do it. And already you think your thoughts are lifted beyond, I've just got to sweep the dirt off this floor. So we get to choose, because we are a sovereign soul, we get to choose how we perceive the situation, be it sweeping a floor or doing the most amazing thing, that we think is, I got a blank about something like that. Maybe having a conversation with some world leader, or you've got to sweep the floor in the kitchen because there's some crumbs and dirt on it. Both the actions are just actions, and we can do both with a sense of dignity and self-respect and nobility. So Mahatmyam means great and essential soul. So great souled. Just think that. Mahatmyam, great souled. And when we connect with the sovereignty of our soul, with that is a connection to Mahatmyam, being great souled, and this quality of dignity and self-respect comes through in all that we do. So let's start with a story, but today, rather than me telling you a story, let's create our own story. So you're the storyteller. So think of someone you know or you know of, someone with a quiet self-assurance, a person with a strong moral compass, who is not swayed by passing fancies, a man or a woman who sets a clear direction for their life, who is dependable and trustworthy, who doesn't give his or her word lightly, but having given it, always follows through. This is a person who others go to for advice or comfort, or think of when presented with a problem. We may not be likely to meet them personally. This may happen. We may not see them personally. They may not be alive anymore. So meeting them in person isn't on the cards. But a meeting of hearts and minds is always available. Perhaps you could think of your grandmother or your grandfather. Stay with that, the being, the essence of that person. It's been an immense privilege in my life to have met many people who are just like this, strong people in the true sense of that word, not forceful or combative, but steady and resilient. And with that person still in your mind and heart right now, consider these questions. What do we now understand of dignity, this elusive quality that we recognize as soon as we see it? What do we now understand of dignity? What of self-respect? Do you think about dignity and self-respect as you go about your life? Do you think of dignity and self-respect that they're important? And a dignity and self-respect connected? So dignity is a subtle, elusive quality, and it's hard to describe in words, but you know it when you see it. And it's a quiet strength. It's an integrity and dependability, which engenders respect and a feeling of admiration. So in English, it means worthiness or honor. It comes from the Latin dignitas, actually. So we have these qualities that we recognize, and it's an instinctive thing, and it's like a soul connection because we have that dignity within ourselves, so we recognize it in others. So as a teacher, no matter what age or ability, there were students who were always respectful of other students, no matter the differences in age or ability. And they always saw the best in others. They showed a great personal dignity and self-respect in their speech and their actions. And I was always inspired by just seeing a young child of 6 years old or 9 years old or 12 or something display those qualities, and they did it naturally. Or sometimes I could see them remembering to do the right thing, that they would see do the right thing, even though they didn't want to. If they lost a race in a athletics carnival, and they were disappointed in themselves that they didn't win, but they went over and they shook the hands of the person who won. That's an action of Mahatmyam, someone who's great-souled. So remember, dignity is being great-souled and high-minded. And it is an action or a way of embracing the sovereignty and greatness of our soul, is by acting with dignity and self-respect. And it's a way of uplifting all those with whom we live and with whom we meet. And it's an act of service. So it's anything but egotistical. It's an expression of the greatness and sovereignty of our soul. And we have that choice in front of us all the time. And one practical bit of advice from the Taittiriya Upanishad, it says, when you don't know what to do or think or say in a particular situation, think of what a wise man or woman of your town would think and do in that situation, and do likewise. So that's always a good practice to guide us through life. So if you want to find out more about Damayanti, go to my website, damayanti.store, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram. You can follow me there. And if you have any questions, drop me a line at help@damayanti.store. And I'll finish off with a beautiful prayer, which absolutely is an expression of the greatness of all of us, the sovereignty of our magnificent infinite soul. And it's the universal prayer for all. May all be happy. May all be free of disease. May all see what is uplifting. And may no one suffer misery of any sort. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina. Sarve Santu Niramaya. Sarve Bhadrarni Pashantu. Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you for spending time with me on Damayanti, the show for your soul. To find out more about Damayanti, or to get my book, Conscious Confidence, Use the Wisdom of Sanskrit to Find Clarity and Success, or to purchase my range of beautiful spiritual jewelry, go to my website, damayanti.store. That's DAMAYANTI.store. Damayanti.store. See you next time.